Well, what better day to talk about the offensive line performance at the NFL Combine than when we get some news regarding the Packers and one of their offensive linemen. So, reportedly, per Matt Schneidman of The Athletic, the Packers met with Jon Runyan Jr.'s representation at the NFL Combine. Drew Rosenhaus and his agency are the ones that represent JRJ. They also represent Aaron Jones and Devondre Campbell as well. But they met there. Obviously, we heard some of the discussion that took place as far as the cap number for Aaron Jones. But now we're hearing that, there is mutual interest from the Packers and Jon Runyan Jr. to come back to Green Bay and have him back on that offensive line. But Rosenhaus did say that, the number would have to work for both the Packers and Runyan Jr. So it's not a done deal by any means, but the fact that there's a little bit of smoke there possibly means that we might be looking at, bringing him back. But what that means as far as how the Packers approach this position group in the draft may change between now and April when the draft actually comes through. But let's go ahead and look at some of the offensive line that was out on the field at the Combine on Sunday. So apparently there's this magic number out there for offensive linemen, and it's related to the short shuttle. So if you can run a 4.47 short shuttle, which is 20 yards, 4.47 seconds or better, you're essentially at a greater advantage to succeed in the NFL. So Josh Norris of Underdog Fantasy posted about this, but since 2010, there have been 28 offensive linemen who recorded a time of 4.47 or better. 24 of them were drafted. Of those 24 drafted, they went on to start 84% of the games in their career. So pretty big hit rate there. And essentially he goes on to call it a cheat code at the position. So this year we've got 6 new guys that meet that threshold. Tanner Bortolini, Amarius Mims, Dominic Pooney, Dylan McMahon, Jarrett Kingston, and Brady Latham. These guys all met that mark or exceeded it. And the most athletic of them, it would seem, is, just a few hours down the road in Madison and played for the Badgers for the last several years, and that's Tanner Bortolini. And, he just tested through the roof. He was the second fastest in the 40. He had the fastest short shuttle, obviously 4.28 there on that short shuttle. And he also had the fastest 3-cone, which he had a 7.16, which is the fastest of a center at the Combine in NFL history. He, passed somebody named Jason Kelsey who put up a 7.22 a couple of years back. I don't know who that guy is. But, ultimately, outstanding performance, killed the Combine, definitely rising up some draft boards there. And another thing that the Packers look for along the offensive line is some versatility. And as you can see here, Tanner Bortolini has that for sure. He lined up at all 5 of the offensive line positions while he was with the Badgers down in Madison. So let's see. Super athletic, versatile, kind of a mid-round grade. It sounds pretty much like a Packers offensive lineman to me. So chalk him up in all your mock drafts coming up. But, I do expect that he probably, rose a good bit. And at the very least, he's going to have scouts going back and rewatching his tape to see if he's worth, a higher round pick. But he's not the guy that you would have thought I'd be talking about with versatility in the Packers. And that guy would be Graham Barton, who the Packers did meet with at the Combine. He's the center out of Duke. And while he didn't test, he does have that versatility and is projected in that late first round kind of range where the Packers are picking. Somebody to keep an eye on. Another guy that was on that list, for the short shuttle was Dominic Pooney, the guard from Kansas, who, had a nice performance there. Fits the typical size that the Packers like to target for their offensive linemen. He's 6'5", 313 pounds, has 33 3/8 inch arms. And again, on that shuttle list, so a potential guy that they'd be looking at in the interior of that offensive line. But really where you might want to be looking at would be tackle. And the guy that I like to look at closely in this for the Packers is Kingsley Suamatea, who is the BYU offensive tackle. still developing a little bit, but, hits so many of the targets that the Packers want there. He moves really well. He's got good length. And, they also met with him at the combine, as they did with Talizi Fuaga, who is also an offensive tackle, but probably projects more as an offensive guard in the NFL. But, I would really be looking, if we're looking at a pick towards 25 or the first round, I'm really looking at Fuaga, Graham Barton, or I'll throw in Jackson Powers Johnson there as well, though I'm not sure he's going to make it all the way to 25. Jackson Powers Johnson being the center from Oregon, who's super athletic, killed it at the Senior Bowl, tested really well again. But, if it's either Barton or Powers Johnson, I'm really thinking that the Packers are probably moving on from Myers, as early as this year. He's got one more year left on his deal. So it's definitely something to look at, because we don't have a secondary guy that's going to easily step into that position to take over for him, even if he was injured, if they did want to keep him as their preferred starter. If you're looking at, Fuaga, I'm thinking he's probably more, your right guard moving forward. He's probably starting right away at right guard, or at least, pushing Ryan to kind of compete there at that spot, because I'm assuming in that scenario Jon Runyan Jr. is gone. So, the tackle position is definitely someplace that I think we need to address. You're looking at potentially moving on from Bakhtiari. You've got Nyman, who is a free agent, so I don't think he's coming back. It sounds like they're maybe moving on from Bakhtiari. So definitely, at the very least, you probably want to get somebody that could potentially be a swing tackle there. And again, that versatility that the Packers like to covet on the offensive line is something that they might be considering as they're looking at guys like Bortolini or Barton that have that versatility that can play out there, but their size doesn't really project them to meet what the Packers are really looking for to play tackle. Can they step in a pinch? Absolutely. But they're not guys that they would really want to rely on heavily in those spots. So based on all the contract situations and, the uncertainty along that offensive line, as well as guys like, Myers, whose contract is expiring soon, or Ryan, who, only has 2 years left on his deal, I think the Packers are going to take at least one offensive lineman in their first 5 picks. If it's not at 25, you might look at Sio Matea at 41 or even 57 if he slips that far. Or you're looking at maybe Bortolini or McCormick from South Dakota State, or even Christian Mahogany, who we talked about last week in a video out of Boston College. But I think that's kind of where we're looking at with this offensive line. I would be surprised if we got out of the draft and we didn't have at least 2 offensive linemen picked. Well, that about does it for the NFL Combine. We recapped all the positions. If you haven't seen them, go check out my channel page and you can see those videos there. Next week kicks off free agency and the new league year. Monday, they'll be able to start negotiating with free agents, and Wednesday is the actual opening of the league year, so we'll see some action there. I'll put out a primer video to get you ready to see what the Packers are potentially going to be looking at in free agency sometime early next week, and you'll be able to check that out right up here as well. So stop by, check it out, and as always, go Pack Go.